I am Allison Frenzel. I'm one of the owners here at Fabled. I'm so excited to talk to you.
You guys are the best. I can't tell you how much the support means to me. It's been so lovely. Just thrilled.
I'm so excited. And then Elizabeth, I'm on my iPad, which I've never done in Zoom. So this is super professional. Elizabeth is here as well, correct? I'm not seeing you, Elizabeth. So I'm assuming. Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Do you see her okay, Rae?
Yes, I do. I see you both.
Okay, hey, Rae.
Hi, Elizabeth.
I DM'd you. I'm like, I promise you we're working out our technical difficulties, but
no,
I know there's nothing really nothing to make you panic more than something not connecting or not working. And anyways, we're here and I'm so excited about talking about the book. And I'm so excited there's so many people here. We had almost 75 people sign up for this event.
Oh my gosh, that's extraordinary. That's amazing.
Well, I'm not surprised because this book was so great. I have a thing I always say that in Texas, of course, you know, our summers are very warm. Yeah. And I have said, like, if you want to feel cold, read Dr. Zhivago. And I'm like, this is another contender if you want to feel cold.
That's right. You can't really get much colder than this one.
That's right. So I'm truly so excited to have you. I'm going to have Elizabeth introduce you formally and then give anyone here some instructions. This is a webinar, which means that your face is not shown if you are listening to us, which is, you know, sometimes a good thing, sometimes a bad thing. But if you'd like to ask Rae any questions, we have a chat that I will try to monitor and ask her questions. We have questions ourselves for Rae, which may overlap with some of yours, but feel free to put them in the chat and anything you want to talk to her about. And then at the end of this discussion, we will showcase our next month's book. So Rae, feel free to stick around if you would like to see what we're reading.
I'd love to.
So yeah, so Elizabeth, I will let you introduce her.
All right, very good. Well, tonight we are joined by the wonderful Rae Meadows. She is the recipient of the 2019 Goldenberg Prize for Fiction, the 2018 Hackney Literary Award for the novel, and a finalist for the 2018 Manchester Fiction Prize. She is the author of I Will Send Rain, which came out in 2016, and it was shortlisted for the Langham Prize in American Historical Fiction and longlisted for the International Dublin Literary Award. Meadows received a BA in Art History from Stanford University and an MFA in Creative Writing from the University of Utah. She lives with her family in Brooklyn, New York. And we are so thrilled to have you tonight, Rae. I know I messaged you right after I read the book and I was like, oh, 5 stars. I loved it so much. And I don't think Google was a little concerned about how much I was Googling gymnastics accidents.
I know you probably never thought you would be Googling Soviet gymnasts, but
you never know. Yes, absolutely.
Oh yeah, we both were. I think that's part of our discussion too, is things we Googled during our reading of this book.
Perfect.
Well, just to refresh, of course, I read this book probably in, I think, September or October. Can you give our audience just sort of an elevator pitch of the book? What you like to tell the publishers, what you tell people about the book when you are talking about Winterland?
Yeah, I kind of, this is kind of how I think about it in a small, in 1970, on the edge of a small Arctic town on the edge of the Soviet Union, a former ballerina and a young mother disappears, leaving her daughter Anya and her husband with this mystery. And her daughter Anya is soon tapped to be part of the Soviet state system in gymnastics, where she goes ever higher and higher, and soon learns there's very little margin of error for anybody. So I think that's kind of it. I think of it as a coming of age story for Anya, but also obviously in this extraordinary world that she is in, that she's a part of. And when I think about, I have always been drawn to the idea of how we all have extraordinary moments in our lives and very ordinary lives. And so sometimes people, I live in Brooklyn. It's a very diverse area, a lot of immigrants, and I ride the subway with people, and I often wonder what lives they have left behind. And So I think for me, this was a little bit of that, to think of this woman and what this extraordinary life that she had before.
Yeah.
So great. Well, sorry, I think I got settled on my computer while you were giving the pitch. So hopefully, and I will tell you too, Rae, most of everyone has read the book here.
That's amazing.
I know that Elizabeth and I read it a while ago. So we were hoping you would give a good elevator pitch, because I was like, I bet there are people that have like read books in between and kind of need a refresher.
Right.
So that is great. Thank you so much. Tell us about what inspired you to write Winterland.
You know what? I think of this book as a little bit of a few of my obsessions smashed together. I started out writing a very different book. I thought that I would write a book that was set entirely in Brooklyn, and it had a very distant character that was going to be a gymnast. And then I went down the rabbit hole of watching videos of Soviet gymnasts, and I just completely became obsessed. I mean, I love gymnastics. My daughter is a gymnast. I was a gymnast. I still do gymnastics. It's something that I really love. Yeah, we'll talk about that. And so the research part of this book really is where it came together for me. I started watching these, and it's kind of amazing now what you have access to, which you didn't used to have access to, but these old Soviet film, both kind of these propaganda films that they made about the gymnastics team, and then also the competition films, and watching those. And when I was growing up, I remember watching the Soviet gymnasts on TV. I mean, I was enthralled by them. They were the best in the world. American gymnastics was nowhere near them at that time. And they just were these tiny girls with the very serious faces and just the skill that was just beyond anything that I could really imagine. So that they had my attention. And when I went back and started researching, I just loved it. And then I came across the story of Elena Mukina, who is the inspiration for the character of Elena in the book. And she has this tragic story where she did break her neck 2 weeks before the Olympics in 1980, being pushed to do something that she was not physically able to do. And the Soviets did embark on a cover-up that lasted for years. I mean, they spun this as, they thought it was shameful and embarrassing right before the Olympics that their star had been injured and couldn't compete. And so it really wasn't until the Soviet Union fell that her story came out, that what actually happened. And I knew I wanted to write about her. I didn't want to just write her story as a kind of biography. So I kind of wanted to bring her in. And I also liked kind of imagining more of a life for Elena than she had. And so I think bringing together her with Anya, I liked doing a lot. So I think that's what kind of got the novel started. And then I read about, I'm very drawn to inhospitable landscapes. And this is about as inhospitable as you get. I just happened to read about it. And I was just kind of, I don't know, I found it fascinating how people adapt and how they can live in the most extreme, harsh environment and still kind of play out these human dramas. So then they just kind of all smashed together for me in this story. And I think about the city of Norilsk is a real place. It is, it's still a closed city. You're not allowed to go without permission from the Russian government. So I think for me, it almost became a mythical place because I was able to do as much research as I could and then kind of have this fictional world in my mind. And I think because it's so isolated and so extreme, it seems almost apocalyptic in a way because it's just so harsh, a harsh way to live and a harsh place to be.
Yeah. I was wondering, I want to talk a little bit about Anya, and I think you kind of answered. I was curious why you chose to do Anya's story versus Elena, maybe explore that a little bit more. And who was your inspiration for Anya? Did you do a lot of research to find her, or was it maybe part of your daughter?
Yeah, there's a little bit, she's not based on my daughter, but I felt comfortable in portraying a child at this age because I see with my daughter who's now 12 but is a serious gymnast, and the switching that happens between, you know, even when she was 8, of being an 8-year-old but then switching into this very serious sport and being able to be have incredible focus, and so I was comfortable in exploring Anya in that way. I felt like I could understand a child in that position a little bit. Anya is she's fictional. I think there's a bit of a lot of, you know, certainly in the gymnastics part, inspiration from a lot of real people. I like the idea of Anya being someone who was both motherless and had a father who's kind of an ineffectual parent. So she is older than her years. You know, she has to kind of exist in the world in a way that she seems maybe older than she is, because she has to be. She just doesn't have, at least, you know, she doesn't have that family. And I think the idea of this lost mother for her is so huge in shaping her in both what drives her and also is the thing that is never quite fulfilled, because she always has this emptiness and this missing piece. And I wonder, you know, if I have thought, you know, if her mother hadn't disappeared, would she have followed the same path? Probably not. Would she have been as good of a gymnast? Probably not. So I think it's like a weird, you know, it's obviously she wouldn't have chosen not to have her mother there, but it kind of determined her fate in a lot of ways.
Totally. Tell us about your research. I feel like this would be very intimidating, because I still feel like Russia is the Iron Curtain. We know so little about it, and especially
totally
during this time that's full of history, full of just challenges. Where do you even begin, and where do you stop? Like how in depth do you go?
Yeah, you know, it's so, I love the research. It's so fun. I could do it forever. And there is a point where you have to kind of stop and say, I have absorbed enough and I have to move forward, or else you get bogged down, I think, in trying to get in the research. And that's one of the, I think, stumbling blocks often of historical fiction, of trying to cram too much in or try to get all your research in there. For me, it was very visual, a lot of photographs, a lot of film, a lot of books too. I read a lot about Soviet history, a lot about that, what sports meant at this time to the Soviet Union, and how they kind of use sports as an arm of the political agenda. And I even read a lot about, I tried to read in different parts. Like for me, I wanted to bring in the pre-revolution by using Vera and her memory of what life was like before the revolution. Also during the Stalin years, when Vera is younger and put into the camp. And then the later years, even reading a lot about Chernobyl, because in Chernobyl, even though it's after this period when she's in the Soviet Union, when you read about kind of the bureaucracy and the catastrophic failures on so many fronts, but you also kind of see how the Soviet Union works. And I think that was at play also in these years. You know, it was just this bureaucracy and authoritarianism and all these things, where the kind of grand communist experiment that Yuri is clinging to has not panned out, and was not successful and couldn't be maintained, and he's kind of clings to the ideas that he wanted to be, and then in seeing it played out, you know, he sees that it really is not that way anymore. So yeah, I think the research was just immersing. What I tend to do is just immerse myself as much as I can in everything about the culture, and then put it aside and hope that the stuff has settled enough to kind of create that world, you know, fictional world in my head. But I did really try my best to make it accurate in as many ways as I could. Obviously it's fiction, but the gymnastics is accurate. And even though Anya is not a real character, the other players in the Olympics were really, you know, that's how it played out in the Olympics. So tried to stay true to that.
So well done. I do want to interject, and because Janelle in the chat has said, I've heard of the Russian gulags and did not realize how close to a concentration camp they were in the early 1900s.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's extraordinary. And there's no accurate number, but they say at least 15 million people passed within the Gulag system. And so that has such there's no way that can't have an impact on cultural memory and, just the belief that you have about your system and about other people, that because it was such a often random thing that put people into the Gulag, or a political sweep of people. It was really extraordinary. There's a wonderful book that I read by Anne Applebaum, who's a historian, and it's just called Gulag, but it really is a tome, but it is incredible detail. And I had no idea what it was all about. I didn't really realize that the political prisoners were thought of as even lower than the murderers and rapists in the prison, and that actually the roots of the Russian mafia, or the Russian organized crime that we have now, all started in the Gulag. They still use the same terms. They have some same tattoos that are all based from the Gulag system of hierarchy, which is incredible.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the setting as well. You talked a little bit about, is it Norilska?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, I think, that you picked a place that is so remote and then brought it home to Brooklyn. Right?
Yeah.
So I'd love to know why that choice was made, and even how do you research a place that you can't? I mean, I guess you can Google information about this area, and I even am kind of wondering why nobody can go. I mean, why is it? Are they just embarrassed by it? Is this not something that really fits into the Soviet narrative? Or
you know what, I think why people can't go is because it is the natural resources are so immense. It's one of the, I think, the largest deposit of nickel in the world, and so I think they're protective of that. It's also one of the most polluted places in the world. I mean, it's dead. Everything is dead. There's nothing that lives. And I know that there's no accurate information, but even the articles that I've read, they kind of skirt the issue. I mean, the health problems, as you might imagine, are immense, because it's just really bad on your health to live there. But it's still a city of 175,000 people. I mean, this is a mining town, and it's incredible. So I found it just, there's actually a photographer, and she has been to Norilsk, and she took these very haunting pictures. And that was one of the things that, for me, just grabbed my imagination. And there was one actually of an old woman who said she had spent 10 years in a Gulag camp. And that was the beginning of Vera for me, because I could not understand why she would stay there if given any kind of option to leave. So that's kind of where that came in. And I think I would have found it harder to set a novel in Moscow, for instance, because I don't feel confident I'm not sure that I could pull that off as well as someone who lives there and who's Russian. And but I felt like with Norilsk, because so few people have actually been there, and because it's not something that it exists kind of in its own way, isolated way up in the Arctic Circle, that I felt like I could have a better understanding almost of what it was like, to live there. So that it really was that kind of came in as almost its own character for me, the city, because it does require a life that's very specific, and cold and gray, and the darkness is incredible. I don't know how people do it. I don't know how you live when it's dark for months on end,
or light even.
Yeah, for sure.
I think I remember reading this and then getting on maps to look up Norilska. I tried to Google how to say it, and I was like, it could be the North Pole. It feels so far up there. I could not believe it.
Yeah, and I think it felt that way for people who lived there during this time. And even now you can't get there. I mean, you can take a boat and you can fly, but you can't get there by land. So I think it feels still very isolated. But yeah, I enjoy that part of it. I enjoy kind of creating that kind of world was fun for me.
So atmospheric for sure.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Have you had, I mean, I would just think it's so intimidating to write about a different country. Have you had feedback from Russians, or gymnasts, about the story?
Well, it's funny because I was very nervous in writing this book that I would get something wrong. So I did have some people read. I had a woman who grew up in the Soviet Union read it. I had another Russian speaker read it to make sure that there was nothing that I was doing that was offensive or wrong or something that I was just misfiring on. And then I've had a lot of people in the current gymnastics community read it. I haven't heard from any kind of former Soviet gymnasts, but I would be curious. Actually, my daughter has a coach, and she's no longer her coach, but I mean to give her a book the next time I see her, because she was on the Ukrainian national team in the 60s. So I think she would, she is very stereotypical in some ways of a Russian coach. So I think she probably would ring true for her.
Does she have any idea that you wrote this book?
No, she doesn't. No, I know it's a little bit funny. She doesn't. Yeah, I think I very much am a bit of a, I just kind of go in and do it and then give it. No one's reading it along the way or anything. I kind of
no fanfare
myself away. So
I love that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things I loved about this book was kind of a feeling of nostalgia. When I was growing up, I was obsessed with the Olympics, and really the USSR, the gymnasts and the ice skaters. And
yes,
I remembered their names. I even think of, Svetlana Horkina and
yes.
All these names, and they were almost terrifying in a way. They didn't seem like they were of this planet, I guess.
Yes.
Which is, I'm sure.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Elizabeth. I would say otherworldly for sure.
Yes. And we were like, what do they have? Because we all knew, who knows what was going on behind the scenes. We all knew it was probably not good.
Probably not great. Yeah.
Yeah. These little girls who probably, left, and probably boys, like I'm sure left their homes and left their parents. And, but I'm wondering if the new generation now feels that same nostalgia for the Olympics like we did. What do you think about that?
I think it's different. I think that, I look at my kids, certainly the daughter who's a gymnast, loves watching gymnastics and thinks about the Olympics, but not in the same way. I think because there was that Cold War, a little bit of that bad guy, good guy feeling. And those meetups and those Olympics felt much more weighted, and when you saw the Soviet flag go up with their very dramatic song, it felt very different. I think it did feel otherworldly. I think it felt they felt different to me. Those girls did not seem like girls that I understood. There definitely felt, even though I'm sure they, that was just part of the mythology that I brought to it. But yeah, I think it's different. I think that's right on the nostalgia. I think that there is a certain, at least for that period of gymnastics, gymnastics is very different now. I mean, the athleticism is so high, but because of the way that things are scored, which is no longer out of the perfect 10, it's a code of points and it's a different way. You're not going to see the same kind of style and classicism as you saw in those earlier years, because you're not rewarded for it. It used to be that I think the Soviets had such a specific look, and their dance was impeccable, and they had this very balletic training and all that stuff. But now, because the way that things are scored, you don't get points for style. You only get points for skill. And so it's just a different kind of, I mean, I love gymnastics now, but I think that was that's a lost time that we won't really see the likes of which again.
Yeah,
that's so true. And I think I think any generation, there is a feeling towards Russian teams, like a otherworldliness, like a real awe. Like I was looking at what Sarah said in the chat, even about Russian figure skaters.
Yes.
Like you have this feeling like there's something behind the scenes that's not going on that's good. Like it's abusive, it's oppressive.
Yeah. Like that 15-year-old figure skater at the last Olympics who ended up having the drug test, failing the drug test. And when she came off the ice, supposedly her coach said, this was after she had gotten the drug test, and and then she fell multiple times in her program after that. And the coach said, "Why did you stop fighting?" And that was what he said to this crying 15-year-old. So there is that sense that there's still, even though it's no longer the state system for these sports, there still is a holdover of a certain cultural feeling about athletes and what they kind of owe their country and what their job is. It's not, I don't think you would see a Russian athlete pulling out because, like Simone Biles did. I just don't think you would see it because the consequence would be too great. Yeah.
I think the most telling is when I read about Elena Markina.
Yeah.
After she she was paralyzed, she thought, thank goodness I don't have to do this anymore. She would rather be paralyzed than do that. And I thought, wow, I can't even imagine being in that mindset.
Oh yeah, it is so tragic. And I have watched her. I mean, she was a beautiful gymnast and she was so talented, but it's interesting to have that. I don't know how you do that where you go out. I guess because they felt they did not have an option. I mean, I don't think she felt like she had an option. She had to do that skill, even though she knew, she had said in an interview before she died that she knew she knew that she would be hurt because she could not do it. And so to go out there and do it, knowing that it's just, it's hard to imagine that mindset.
Absolutely. Let's talk about some other characters, especially Vera and Lidorsky. Tell us about your reasoning in including telling two stories versus just Anya's, and why was it important to include Vera's background, which I was like riveted about.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I feel like you can't really write about the Soviet Union without talking about the Gulag, because it's so essential to that Soviet experience that was floating out, even if you weren't a part of it, that was part of the narrative of the Soviet Union, what was going on. So I wanted to have an older character that would be able to bring in that history without it just being told, so that she would have this history. And also I really love Vera, and I wanted her to kind of connect with Anya and have something in this later part of life after having this just awful experience. But I also really loved writing about her when she is this upper crust girl and what life was like before the revolution, when she is worried about her dress and they're having this Easter and everything is kind of beautiful, and she's not thinking about classes or anything else until she has that one experience where she looks into the mill workers, the way that they live, and has a moment of kind of understanding that not everyone lives as wonderfully as she does. But it's kind of fascinating that the Soviet Union was such a specific amount of time that Vera can kind of live through all these different stages. I mean, she doesn't live past the Soviet Union falling, but she kind of sees what how things changed and what life was like. And I liked writing her. I thought she, to me, is someone who, she's obviously incredibly perseverant in her life, but she's also thoughtful, and I liked the idea that she could connect to Anya's mother, Katerina, that she could kind of bring that in a little bit more than just from what her husband remembers of her.
So true.
Yeah, and Lidorsky, I think, made it I initially wasn't going to have that storyline, but I wanted somehow to bring out something slightly positive too from their experience, because they had such terrible experiences, but to come together later in life and kind of accept each other and be friends. I like that. I liked kind of giving that to her.
So true.
Well, I have a really easy question to ask you. It's involving Russian history and Putin. So, when I think about the USSR, what we remember as little kids, and then really 1989, the wall comes down, the USSR crumbles, and it seemed like there was kind of a time of hope. I mean, I remember seeing pictures of teenagers wearing the cool clothes, American clothes, and sort of this exciting time. But it almost seems like Russia is backsliding into this state of terror with Putin. Mm-hmm. Can you speak to that at all?
I can. I mean, I'm certainly no Putin expert, but from what I understand, I have read, someone said, scratch Putin and you get a Soviet. And I think that is telling. He very much came of age in the Soviet Union, and he came of age in as part of the KGB. And so I think that that is an easy place for him to slide into. And he is now talking about like the how sad it is to lose the Soviet Union, and he's kind of bringing that back as in these kind of positive terms, which is amazing. And so you have even though there's now there's a full generation that was born after the Soviet Union crumbled, I think there is a cultural memory that makes Putin and the kind of authoritarianism more easier for it to take root, because I think that under that kind of acceptance, or not acceptance, but familiarity with repression and control and those kind of things that came out of the Soviet Union, I think that it's not that far removed. And so I think that I think there's a lot. It's really scary and sad. Putin is a master at trying to control the narrative and control history, and is now talking about Stalin in terms that are shifting, and it's fascinating. It's a bummer. But yeah. It
is. Well, two of our attendees put in the chat that they Googled so much while they're reading the book that they're probably on a Russian surveillance list, which include me as well in that. Because I honestly think that's what's so wonderful about a book like this, is like you're learning so much and you're curious about so much. And even when you're talking about Putin, I remembered conversations I had with my husband where there's like rumors that he's really sick, and not a lot of people see him in public right now. And who knows what happens? There's just so much that we don't know about Russia. And I mean, obviously Russia plus gymnastics. I don't know a lot about gymnastics. And while reading the book, I went down kind of a rabbit hole watching these band events, watching
the band skills.
Yes. Watching the men do it and noticing like, oh, that has like so much of a different kind of strength than a woman would have. No wonder it's banned.
Yeah.
Do you feel like now, today, that the powers that be are better at protecting athletes now? Or do you feel like we're continuing to push the body where it shouldn't be? And I mean, this is a very like abstract question.
No, but I think it's a great question. And I do think, any elite level sport is going to be pushing the body in a way that's probably not healthy, but yet to get there is probably necessary if that's, what is required. I think that if you look at a country like China that still has a state system, who knows what goes on there? And I feel for those girls in the gymnastics. I mean, they're beautiful, they're amazing, but I can't imagine what goes into that. I think in the United States, there's still an element. I mean, I think things have improved a lot. I think there's still that issue of younger girls who are, because gymnastics, you have to be so young really to at your height. Now it's changing a little bit where people are are slightly older and able to come back, but you're still looking at underage girls who are just malleable and will do what is required. And I don't think it's super healthy. I know my daughter's competitive gymnast. She's not going to be in the Olympics, but she, she's serious about it. And sometimes I worry about that. I do think it affects the body in a way that you never quite get over. I think that injuries can last a lifetime. As far as pushing, because it is amazing, if you look at the skills of what's being done now compared to 30 years ago, I mean, it's gone into a whole different realm of what people can do, of what specifically in gymnastics. I don't know where the limit is. And I don't know. It's a good question. I think it's a question also. I mean, we can talk about football for that matter, like what you require, and the interest in the sport, when you have something where you can be injured or even killed, but then it's almost like a heightened interest in a sport where that can happen. Right. And it's dangerous. Gymnastics is incredibly dangerous. And I don't know, there is part of me that, and I wanted to explore a little bit with Anya. I think that even though we know that what is happening to her body as she is pushed to do these things, there's still certainly part of me in writing her that wants her to win and that wants her to kind of get something out of what she has put into it. And that's probably not healthy either, because I know that. I know what's going into it, and yet I still kind of want her to win.
I think that we've been on that side too, though, watching the Olympics. I mean, there's this idea of like, should they be doing this? But also you're fascinated with it and you're rooting.
Totally. Yeah. And Simone Biles made a comment that if coaching eases up, if they become nicer, you will not see what you see. You will not see the level that you're seeing now. And I think that's probably true. But then, I don't know where that line is or who makes that call, or if we shift as a society of what we want to see or what we expect to see.
So my son played football in college, and of course I was always worried, about his health. And what's interesting is, they do so much now for safety, but they're also playing against people who are much superior in their athleticism than they were 20, 30, 40 years ago. So it's a double-edged sword, but it's, it's entertaining, and there's
totally. And
a whole lot to unpack.
Yeah, it is a lot to unpack. And I think if there's I do think that you cannot make a great athlete. I think you can make a really good athlete, but unless that athlete has the passion, drive in themselves, they're not going to get that to the very top. So then, if you have someone who feels that and has that, it's hard to say don't use it in that way that you want to.
Right. Well, we always love to ask our authors, first of all, what do you like to read? Who are one of your favorite books or authors, and what are you working on next?
Yeah, I read very widely. I don't have any kind of system. I am like, people will send me stuff and I'll read it, and but I do read contemporary fiction. I read also, I just reread one of my all-time favorites, To the Lighthouse, Virginia Woolf, and it held up, so I was really pleased. Recently I read, which is not, it's from a few years ago, but the Shuggie Baines, which I loved, that Scottish book. It was really beautiful. I read all over the place. I'm currently, so this kind of fades into what I'm working on. I am, I think, going to set my next novel in 15th century Florence. So I'm going way back. So I'm currently reading a few books about the painter Botticelli, about the monk or the friar Savonarola, and what else am I reading? A book that's about this house for virgin girls that was in Florence, and I in some way those things will fit together. I'm not quite sure yet, but that is where I think I will where I'm going next.
The marriage portrait would be another good one.
Oh, yes. Oh, good idea.
Yeah. I always have to push books in people's hands.
Yes.
I love that. No, and that's how I get to books always is people recommending or, giving me books or, I'll get a review copy of something and that's definitely how I get to it. I'm also reading the Ann Patchett essay book, These Precious Days, which is lovely, a lovely book.
Oh, great.
What else do I have on my docket? But yeah, I read everything. I will say, I shouldn't say that. I'm not, and for no judgment, I'm just not a big reader of fantasy or science fiction, just because I don't know, it just hasn't been on my, but I like how people are blurring the lines a little bit these days and a little less rigid in those categories.
So true. Well, I love that you're not afraid of research too, which I mean, I could tell seeing you with your books all behind you.
Yeah.
Not afraid. You're like, I'll take on any century, any country. I love
it. Totally. I'll do
great.
it. I'm game. I do find that I think research helps me. I've never, I don't know. I haven't had that feeling of writer's block but I have had that thought of like, oh, maybe I can't write another novel, but research is always a thing that kind of gets me going. In the book before this one, I was writing about the Dust Bowl and it was exactly that same thing. I got really just totally immersed in it and then the kind of the stories came out of it from there for me.
I love it. Well, we have a few questions from our participants. One from Brenda was, talk about Anya's mom, which I also remembered wanting to know what happened to her. Do you have an idea what happened to her? Do you like to lead it up to the reader?
I do. I do have an idea. I quite honestly, I feel like that her actual death was not nefarious, that it was due to the elements, but I think that everything came into it to push that to happen. So I don't feel like it's an innocent death, but I do feel like in the end, it was not, she was, that nothing, they didn't come for her, like that she really did die in the elements. It was important for me to kind of have her feel that she was on the upswing, that she had kind of come back to her family in her mind, and that she believed that she was heading back into that. But yeah, I think that there are a number of things that obviously that could have happened, but honestly, that's the way that I thought about it.
Yeah. I think that was what I probably thought, which you probably meant on purpose, which well done. That's probably what I thought as well. Good. I mean, there's a certain time where I was like, I wonder if we're going to figure out what happened to her, but those definitely connect for sure. Yeah. I'm trying to think who asked this question. It was someone asked, Janelle asked, she loved the coach of Anya. Where did the inspiration come?
Oh, thank you. I loved writing him. I loved writing Anatoly. I think that he, to me, I have a lot of feeling for him, even though he's obviously very flawed. And, but I didn't want him to be, kind of this evil character. I really felt like he was part of the system in a way that there was no way that he could get out of it. And I think he feels strongly for Anya in his kind of off-kilter way, right. And not in a gross way. I mean, I think
although I do think he was gross.
He's gross. He's completely gross. And
I felt that
is despicable and in many ways, but I felt I wanted him to be this kind of like, I don't know. I think when she's in his apartment and she sees his toothbrush down, I mean, it's gross. And he's kind of like this sad character in a way. But so, yeah, I think I didn't want to go into the place. Obviously there's some sexual abuse that goes on, but I didn't want this to be that story. I wanted it to be a complicated relationship with a coach. but not that. And I think that I really enjoyed writing his emails because he's so awful in some ways, but I felt like I had a handle on him. I felt like I understood him as somebody who, I don't know, he's a product of where he comes from, and also doesn't know how to act. He doesn't know how to interact. He doesn't know how to have these kind of personal relationships. But yeah, I really enjoyed writing him a lot. I also really enjoyed writing the friend of Anya's, Sveta, who I think is a very tragic character. Yeah.
So well done. I was just thinking that he, in his own way, is trapped too, where he's a product of the system and he is where he is for a reason, and he can't get out of it just as much as she can't get out of it.
Totally. And he's having to prove himself and feeling like he has to get someone to Round Lake, or else he doesn't know what's going to happen. But yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think he feels trapped. I think he makes one comment about his father. I think he makes a comment about his father, but having to had gone to Norilsk, and he is an exile in his own way. I mean, he doesn't have any other option either.
It's so true.
Yeah.
So well done. I really, really, I mean, I don't say that about every book or every author we have on here.
We chose it for our subscription box. Did we tell you that, right?
I mean, that is so incredible. It's such a great honor, and it's just the biggest compliment. Thank you. Yeah, it's lovely.
Well deserved. Well, if it's okay with you, Rae, we are going to introduce our next month's book, which I'm going to have introduce, and I'm going to put in the chat a couple of links. One being the link to the book to buy it, which Rae, you're also welcome to join us next month.
Yeah, I love it. I'm going to read it.
Awesome. And then the link to sign up for our next Zoom, and due to very, very much hype and popular, I would say like people are asking for us to give them this, our winter book recommendations. We will be doing that next week. I'm going to give you the link for that to sign up. And this will be the best books in our eyes that are coming out this winter / spring.
Not next week, though.
It's not next week, but just get excited. I'm still getting on. I
was like, oh no,
still coming at me.
January 31st.
Oh, thank you. Gosh, that makes me feel so much better. I was thinking we had many more events, but now you'll have plenty of time to sign up and read books in between that time. But it's so much fun. Elizabeth and I have so much fun running through all the books. We have a huge turnout. I think last time we had 700 people sign up for it.
800 people signed up for it.
Wow.
Yes. And this is not the first time that many people have signed up for it. So I would love for you to join us, and we will not have any technical difficulties on that evening. I promise you. Actually, I can't promise you, but I really hope not to. But I'm going to put all those in. Like, actually, Haley is ahead of me. She's putting some of them in there. I'm going to just push send to have them. But I will have Elizabeth introduce our next month's book.
All right, so our February book is The Bandit Queens by Parini Shroff. This is a debut novel. I absolutely loved it. It takes place in India. It's a friendship story, a bunch of women in India, and it's a murder story, and it's hysterical. I don't know if I've ever laughed out loud and been outraged on every single page, but basically a woman's husband leaves, and he just leaves. And so the main character just has this kind of freedom. But everyone thinks that she murdered her husband, and they're like, wow, you've got a pretty good thing going on. Can you show me how did you murder your husband? So it's funny. It really is a tale of friendship. I loved the friendship in the story. So Parini will be joining us in February, and the book is really blown up. We're so excited for her. Don't miss out. We have lots of copies at the store, and they have signed book plates. So if that's something that's important to you, just know until they run out, we have signed books.
That's exciting.
And
that's great.
Haley has put in the chat, winter preview is January 31st, which is not next week. And the next book club is February 7th. So we hope you guys will join us then. Thank you so much, Rae.
Thank you so much.
Such a pleasure.
Oh my gosh, so fun. Thank you.
Opening up all your thoughts and ideas for this wonderful book. And we can't wait to read the next one you have coming out.
Thank you so much. Thank you both. Thank you, everybody.
Yes,
so
thank
fun.
You. Yeah, we loved it.
Next time.
Great. See you next time.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.